How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we're going to have a very serious dialogue today. It's something that we've covered before, but I think it's worth revisiting, and we're going to revisit with different perspectives. Not only am I going to be on today's show, but we're also going to have Connie Alleyne, and we're also going to have Gary York. And today we're going to be discussing going back to work after you have been assaulted. What motivated this dialogue, or a revisit of the dialogue, is a message I got from one of the officers that hit me up on Facebook, and he stated, "Hey, I'm Officer," his name, longtime fan. Thank you, I appreciate that. Little over a month ago, I took a pretty good beating at work. I've been assaulted before, but never this bad. Broken nose and a lot of bruises, almost knocked out from getting kicked over and over in the head. I thought for a second he might just put me out and then kill me. Never had an issue like that before. Later on, it was discovered that it could have been related to the inmate being on drugs or just possibly short-staffed. My question is, how do you return back to work knowing you're walking back in similar issues? My nerves, my doubt in myself, my anger, all these things make me feel less confident. By the way, all those things are normal. Today, we're going to have discussions just to kind of elaborate and give a perspective, and I believe this is a video that a lot of people could relate to. I just want to say that this video is also sponsored by three entities. We have American Military University. If you guys get a chance and you're looking to seek higher education, check out American Military University. It's a great school. Got some great online programs, especially for us in corrections. If we're busy, you know, this is a great way to get that education, going online and kind of managing school at your own time. And guys, not only is the show supportive of me, doing Tier Talk, which is great, but they're also supportive of what we do in corrections. So thank you, American Military University. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Guys, we do put videos out on Guardian RFID as well, so check out their YouTube channel. And I have one more called The Wrap, WRAP. Now, if you guys are not familiar with The Wrap, there'll be a link to a video of that in the description of this video. But controlling combative subjects quickly and in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington, D.O.C., L.A. County, San Diego County, hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the Wrap restraint. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the Wrap. Give the Wrap a call today, 800-WRAP-911. Okay, so let me bring on our guest, and then after that, we will get right into the topic. Again, guys, I believe that this is a very important topic and definitely worth discussing. So first guest we have is Connie. What's up, Connie? How's life going?
Hi.
Oh, Connie, behind you. There's a fly on the wall. Inside joke, guys, but she'll explain very shortly. What do you got, Connie?
Oh, gosh. Hi, everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall that Anthony is referencing. Season 3 has now started, and so it's exciting to get back to podcasting. I'm also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. So that's been doing its own thing. I appreciate you guys who are out there supporting and purchasing the book. And now I'm here. Tier Talk. We rock on Tier Talk all the time. We've been out for a little bit, but we're back. And so well, I've been away for a little bit, but
it's good to have you back. And guys, if you get a chance, please check out The Fly Behind the Wall. It's easy. It's on Spotify. I got a chance to see the opening of season 3. I'm assuming I'm in season 3 somewhere. But I did hear my name mentioned, so at least she's no longer embarrassed to associate with me.
Oh my God.
We'll see what happens as we get closer. I'm actually on, but guys, I have a longer ride home now, so I had a chance to listen to both episodes. I think the first one's about 17 minutes, the second one's around 33 minutes, and it's just very informative. Plus, you get to know a little bit about Connie, because the second one was really, about your successes, which is great. So it's good to kind of hear what you do, because you never really, I guess it's me, I don't never really give you a chance to, kind of fill in on what's going on in Connie's life. So it's good to kind of get to know you on a more personal level. So, guys, you get a chance, please check out The Fly Behind the Wall. And who else do we have? And I actually just did a recording with him, which was pretty good. We did an episode called The 6 mistakes you definitely don't want to make as a supervisor. So let me bring on Gary York. What's up, Gary? How you been?
Hello, Anthony, and hello, Connie. It's good to be back with both of you again at the same time. I am the author of The Toughest Job, which is about corrections, obviously. Corruption Behind Bars and Inside the Inner Circle. Those two were based on real-life investigations in the prison system. I am also a YouTube. It's called True Prison Stories by Gary York. It's on YouTube, and that's exactly what it is. True Prison Stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It goes from all angles. Retired after 28.8 years. I did half my career in the state prison system in Florida, the other half of my career at the county jail.
All right. And guys, again, this is a very serious topic. I know sometimes we may joke and be a little lighthearted, but don't think for a moment we don't take this topic seriously, because obviously there are a lot of officers, a lot of staff members, not just correctional officers, but also civilian staff that have been assaulted behind the wall. And going back to work is not the easiest of things to do. So we're going to be talking about the mental side, which I feel isn't always looked at. We're also going to be talking about our family views, and we're going to talk about just how we feel, because that's important too. So right off the bat, let's just get something going real quick, and I'll go with Connie first. I believe after someone gets assaulted, especially now during these desperate times, we're so short for numbers, that the agencies may only look to see if the person physically recovered, and they don't always check on them mentally. Do you think the department could do more with that, Connie?
So absolutely. I mean, you think someone has just experienced, or however long it's been since they experienced a significant trauma at work. It's the same work that has to get done in order to not just heal you physically, but mentally. Because I think what we can't forget that people are going to be triggered when they walk into the workplace, right? Like, you can't help but that smell, the drive, like all of those things are going to get you mentally in a very different space. And then once you get back on site, once you start to walk into that front door, I think we're ready until we actually get there. And then we realize either one, we are ready, or two, we've come back to work prematurely. I think the other thing that we want to recognize is that there's a lot of work that has to be done before the person comes back to work, right? Like, so even if you could be doing physical therapy, but certainly folks should be in a space where they are talking to someone about what happened, processing, and really knowing, are they ready to go back? And I think once they get back in, one of the things that I don't know that we do this, but I think we believe a hands-off approach, like just let them go back and ease in. But, I've seen success when we actually sit down with the person and we start to break down the event, right? Because sometimes people struggle with, where did I go wrong? And I think when you break down the event, whether it's just with you and your supervisor, or you and, a few people that you trust that you worked with, we can kind of pick things apart. And not to Monday morning quarterback, but to figure out, how do we prevent this from happening again? Are there some blind sides? Are there some things that we should be doing to make sure that that person feels mentally safe at work, that they knew where they went wrong, or they knew where they were vulnerable, where the risk presented. And now we know how to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
And I do think obviously that matters a lot, because one thing is that before you go back to work, I know one of the things that was told to me is that if you do get assaulted, you have to try to get an understanding of why it happened, how it happened. I mean, you're going to want to know some specifics, so you don't generalize this feeling of being lost and not really be able to find out the specifics so you can move forward. I mean, there's a lot of people that may go to work a little bit before they're ready to. And the problem is that they have this, they don't know where the danger is, let's just say. So they wind up carrying this generalized feeling towards any inmate or any location they're at, because they haven't found a way to justify it into a manner that's balanced. Now, when I say justify it, guys, I'm not saying you're going to justify it to a point where you're 100% comfortable working around inmates. That's not what I mean. I mean, you're going to justify it to a point where you're comfortable to go back and do your job, because the last thing we want is for you to freeze. We don't want that. We don't want you to be ultra aggressive. You know, that's another thing. So we want to make sure that you've been able to deal with it in a manner that can make you effective again. And I really do think it does require some communication, you know, between you and if it is a professional, that would be great. If you don't want to go that route, definitely someone that knows you outside of the uniform, because this isn't, you know, what you should be expected to do or expected to be okay with as an officer. This is how you got to be as a person. So the best people to talk to are people that you can allow yourself to be vulnerable with and people that know you. Like I'm not talking to Officer Gangi, I'm talking to Anthony today. And how do you feel about what happened? Now, we do have someone else that just joined onto the live stream. We're not on the live stream. Sorry about that. Someone that just joined into this recording. Before I put them in, let's guess who it is. Connie, who do you think it is?
Russ?
Ooh. All right. Gary?
William.
Okay. Gary went with William. Connie went with Russ. I'm going to say Russ because I know who it is, but just pretend I don't. It's Russ Hamilton. There he is. What? Russ is, hey, Russ, you got to reintroduce yourself to the audience. And the topic, real quick, is about coming back to work after you've been assaulted. A very important topic. So, but do you mind introducing yourself and tell us how Keepers of Chaos is going?
Not at all. My name's Russ Hamilton. I am the founder of Keepers of Chaos, longtime contributor to Tier Talk. And I come from a background of having about 27 years in California Department of Corrections, another 3 years in juvenile corrections, and some more years now piling up on that in reentry and rehabilitation work.
All right. So as we go back into this topic, Russ, I'm going to kind of go to Gary, and then I'll come to you, and then we'll go back to Connie and kind of go around in circles. Let me actually switch it to this way. I like this way better. But Gary, you know, what's your thoughts on someone coming back to work? Do you think that the agency puts enough effort into the mental well-being of someone coming back to work, or you think they're more concerned about the physical aspect?
I don't think they put enough effort into the mental health part of attacks by inmates. First of all, Connie and what you said earlier, I agree with 100%. I had permission to use this quote from a deputy here in Florida who, and I just want to read it because you're talking about the mental state. And she said, she's a detention deputy. She said, law enforcement taught me the true meaning of making it home to family alive. Great career, but after a brutal attack by an inmate, it changed me mentally. And I know this deputy, and I know that attack changed her mentally. And it was really rough on her. It was a hospital watch. It was a brutal beating. And she has no problem telling the story, but I won't give a name right now and go into it. She's in my book. But the mental part seems to be what most of the officers are talking about. If you notice, the agencies, they'll get you out there to medical help immediately. They'll you'll go on workman's compensation. You'll get medical treatment. You'll get physical therapy in many cases through that workman's comp. But to me, they're not doing enough on the mental health issue. I believe the person that had the question was saying, I have anger, and so forth. And listen, any emotions that you have after being in an altercation with an inmate where you are injured, it's okay. It's normal. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to have a little fear, to come back. That is all normal human reactions, in my opinion. No, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just somebody that was in the business, for 28 and a half years. And I've seen folks come back and get back into it and step into it easy and finally find their way and make it. And I've seen people like this deputy that I just talked about that said, that's it. I'm out of this business. And I think she would have stayed, but I don't think she got the mental help that she needed. And I think if they would have spent some more time with her, she would have stayed, because she's a tough cookie, this person I'm talking about. And I'm using her as an example for what we're talking about today. So some stay and some go, but never worry about your emotions. And if you want to stay, get up, get back on the floor, and get back in there. I'm going to tell you something, in my opinion. Those inmates will see you come back to work. Yeah, they might say, well, there's the officer that got beat by inmate so-and-so. But he's game. He's pretty game. He came back. It didn't knock him out of the game. You'll eventually get things going back. You'll eventually build back up to where you need to be, and you'll be back in the groove again.
Yeah, like I love what you're saying. I mean, the first thing I want to mention is that it also does depend on you admitting it. I mean, you have to admit first that you have a concern. And for some people that say, well, I'm not going to go to who the agency sends me to because I don't trust them. I get it. Sometimes you're going to get that. But believe it or not, agencies do want staff that are healthy mentally. So it is in their benefit to understand concerns, be preventive, and then do what they can to make sure that the person is right to go back to work. But having said that, even if you don't want to go to the agency, then maybe you can find somebody else to talk to, because the key here is definitely after something like that happens, you have to express something. I mean, this is not something you want to keep bottled up. And again, it's not something that you may present from an officer's perspective. It's something that you're going to present from who you are. Like as I said, I mean, you may say, well, as an officer, I can't allow this to get to me. Okay, but you're not an officer right now. You are Anthony Gangi. So if you're not right with you can never be right with the officer role that you're going to have to play eventually, or the staff member's role that you're going to have to play. So the foundation is not the role you have to play. The foundation is who you are going into that role. Russ, what's your thoughts about admitting that vulnerability? Because I'm, you got to feel something about it, and then trying to move forward the best way possible.
Well, I just think that there's some areas where, quite frankly, whether you want to call it administration or management or whatever, falls down on the job in that continuity of follow-up with what's going on with that officer. But, before we even get there, I think that staff should be prepared and trained on things like what to expect if you are assaulted. What is the procedure? What's going to happen with the inmate? Are you going to be contacted, by some kind of victims advocacy group? You should be told, what's going to go on with regards to your workman's comp, so you're not out there in the middle of being hurt, trying to navigate a field that you don't know anything about. And so I think that, if we had that,
Hey, Russ, that was a very good point. I don't want to gloss over that. What you're basically saying right now is, in order for you to focus on you, we need to also take care of the things that really are kind of on the outside of it, but we still want to address it. Don't get me wrong, but you really got to focus on building you back up. So it's great if you could get that help, right? The victims, the people that could step up so they can handle the stuff that needs to be handled, so you could focus on whatever it is that you need to go through. Correct? Is that what you were saying? Because that's spot on.
Yeah, that and being prepared to understand what's going to happen in such a situation. You just get left in the lurch. You're sitting there in the emergency room waiting to get seen or whatever, and nobody's calling you or talking to you. You're wondering about, should I call my wife? Gosh, man, I had it happen one time where I actually didn't want that to happen because I wanted my voice to be and it would have been nice to know what the procedure was and how they were going to handle it without notifying someone, or to have someone call me, and then to walk me through what was going to happen with workman's comp, how long I was going to have to wait to come back, and all of those things. I think if you are able to, get some of that underneath you, and from the outset, and you're not worried about it while you're hurt because you already know what it's all about, then you have a chance at being better prepared for making the big comeback, on the other side of it. So I just wish that, that was part of our training. What happens in an assault? What happens if you're seriously hurt? What if it's just something where you need a couple of days off? Who are they going to call? Are they going to call you at the hospital? Because they should. A couple times it happened to me that they didn't. A couple times it did. So, it's just all depends.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, because that's something that's not normally discussed. And I know that's a worry when, people are thinking about, hey, should I go to medical? They're going to take me out of work. What do I do? How do I get paid? I don't have time for all this. But at the time, you got to be focused on getting better. You got to get to medical. A lot of staff will not go to medical because they don't want to not go to work because they need to get paid and they don't know what happens next. Like, okay, I'm out of work. How long is it going to take me to get that paycheck that I need? And you're right. There's a lot of concerns that stops them from actually doing the right things that can help us prosecute the inmate. You get staff that's getting bodily fluid thrown at them. And, sometimes staff will say, you know what, I'm good. I don't need to go to medical. It's like, yeah, but you do. If you want to have this prosecuted, part of that step may be having to go to medical and be evaluated, because if they're going to push, let's say prosecution, part of that is bodily injury. So I love the fact that you're mentioning that, because I think what you just said is something that people need to hear, because a lot of people don't go the extra step forward because they're so worried about, what happens next. They're not even worried about being assaulted. Technically, they're worried about what happens next. Am I still going to get paid? That's a good point to cover. And I love to know that there are some places that hopefully help out staff, like a victim service, that will help them handle those things so staff can get right mentally. Now, Connie, I wanted to bring up something. The next part of this is family. So here's the thing, guys. This job is not for everyone, right? And there are dangers to this profession. And, I don't hide. I never hid from my wife the dangers of this profession. So she knows. She knows. But having said that, she knows, like, from a very far removed distance, if you will, until it really happens. Now, I have never been assaulted. I've responded to codes, but I myself have never been assaulted. So for my wife, she knows the dangers of the job. And obviously, she has respect for everybody that works in this profession. But the dangers of the job, even though she knows about it, has not really been a reality for her. Because, again, I have never been assaulted. I've never been out of work due to an injury from being assaulted. And I think, to me, for those who get assaulted, the family now is thinking, okay, this is real. And they maybe used to have a trust in you to do the job, because even my wife would sometimes say, well, I don't think Tony would get assaulted because Tony knows how to communicate, knows how to handle himself, or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, babe, but this is still a very unpredictable environment. But that could be what she uses to justify me going to work and being comfortable with me going to work. But then finally, let's say, God forbid, I do get assaulted. Now that belief that she has that carried her through about, who I am and, being able to handle myself, or, or maybe Russ is, he's a big guy, and I'm not worried about him. And all of a sudden something does happen. Now the family, that belief of the day, it's beyond that now. Now it's reality. So Connie, I'll start with you first. I know Gary and Russ are going to want to comment on that, but do you think after you've been assaulted, your family starts to shift in a more extreme perspective of the dangers of the job?
So absolutely. I think being a female working in an environment, my family's perception had shifted automatically. It's like, you can't handle being there, right? Like, and it wasn't so much me personally, but I think their understanding of the environment. And of course, I think just the imagination of how dangerous the environment could be, right? What you have no business being in there. My dad didn't think like a female should be in the prison, right? Like, you are going to get hurt because someone is going to take advantage of you. The inmates are stronger than you. There's all that stuff, right? And I think that, our families are going to take their cues from us, right? And if we are afraid, if we are, we have spoken negatively about the situation, whether it's the environment, it's the handling, it's the inmates, whatever that is, like it only amplifies because they don't know necessarily the realities firsthand. So I think it's a matter of us setting the tone for how that is going to play out. Now, will they still be worried? Of course, they love you, right? And I think that's a reality. Your family cares for you and they don't want you to go back into an environment where this thing could happen to you again. But at the end of the day, I don't know so much that the family is doubting your abilities as much as they're probably questioning just how dangerous it is. Because now it's happened. They now see what could possibly happen as opposed to the things that we talk about.
You know, Connie, that's a very good point you mentioned. You don't want to gloss over that either. Now, Gary has to come up with a good point. So, Gary, you better come up with a good point when we come back to you. But that was a good point, too. It's not so much that they're doubting your ability, but they could be, you know, adding a little bit more of the dangers to the job. Now, let me ask you, I just want to ask one question before we move on to Gary with that. Do you think that when something like that happens, do you think that perspective of the dangers of the job is more realistic now? Or do you think that they could take it a little further past that and then it becomes a little bit of a conflict now between you going back to work? Because now your family, because you've been assaulted, could have an unrealistic view of the dangers. And now they're kind of forced against you going back to work.
So I think it could go both ways, right? So like for me, I know that when an assault happens, like I've seen it played out where like the realities of the danger, right? Because at a point, I remember my dad saying, "Oh, so you meet with the inmates behind the glass," and I was like, "No, that's not how it works." And like his, even in that conversation, his tone changed. Like it was just kind of like, "You don't?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Oh, you always have an officer with you." I'm like, "No." Right. So I could imagine just in his initial perception of like, oh, you know, she's an administrator. She goes to the prison. It's no big deal. But should an assault happen, and now that he has this extra piece of information that like I'm not in this bubble, right? I'm not completely protected. It kind of escalates what he thinks could be happening. And I think the moment an assault happens, I think it takes the imagination just even further because now we got confirmation of how dangerous this environment is.
Yeah, I thought that was definitely something that I don't think we covered that in one of our dialogues before, you know, that assault and how it can add to the perspective of the family. Now, Gary, kind of feeding off what Connie said here, do you think at this point where you have, let's say, a staff member who was assaulted and, you know, they're talking to their family and the family's kind of against them going back to work, but, you know, this is the breadwinner, they got to go back to work. Do you think that if the family is somewhat resistant, but this person does have to go back to work, do you think that could affect how they do their job?
Well, obviously, yes. And any family member it would be worried. You know, if your family loves you, they're going to be worried. And they're going to be afraid that what if it happens again? Could it be worse next time? Now, the officer has to make a decision because he or she is being pulled two directions. Do I go back to work? You know, they want me to come back to work, but my family is telling me, no, don't go back there. I'll support you in anything else you do. Get out of this. But here's what I think. I think that we not only need counseling for the officer mentally and medical care, but I think we need somebody in place or someone that the agency can assign to talk to the family together or the husband and wife together or the mother and son. You know, we get a lot of comments out there. My son works out there and I'm worried about him all the time. A lot of different scenarios. Any family member, we should have something in place that we can have everybody come in and speak to a professional as a family, as a husband, as wife, as a mother, son, whatever.
You're on mute.
I had just touched it, damn it. I like what Gary said too, because you know it is good for, I think when this happens, as we focus on the mental health for the person that's got to go back to work, I could just imagine that there could be some resistance from the family. Is there something we're doing with the family as well to kind of ease the road? Like Russ, what advice would you give to, let's say, the family member of someone who was assaulted, but now this person has to go to work? I mean, what advice would you give that is beneficial for the family, but also for the person that has to go back to work?
I really think it's much tougher on the family. From what I've seen, most officers are chomping at the bit. They want to get back to work. They want to put the incident behind them. They want to get back up on the horse, so to speak, and put those self-doubts to rest. At least I can say, that was the way that I viewed it. I want to say, okay, that's behind me now. I'm ready to go on. With the family, it's much different because they have an unrealistic view of the environment that we work in. They often imagine it to be either much worse than it is or much easier than it is, with the truth lying somewhere in the middle. And after an assault where that false patina of invulnerability of how good your loved one is at their job, when that's kind of, rubbed off, and you can see, yes, they can get hurt. Yes, it is a really super dangerous environment, and the thought that next time it could be worse, that's a hard thing to overcome. But I think what you do is you talk to them about the reality. We have a lot of resources at our disposal. We're almost every man and woman in this job is very good at what they do, and because they're very good at what they do, we provide a lot of teamwork and support to individuals, and we are there, responding to those codes, getting there, sorting things out, stopping the assault. And with all of those things together, the chances of being hurt very seriously never go away, but we're able to mitigate it to a point where it's not as big an issue. Now, I don't know if that's comfort to someone or not, but I think that, bringing them into the fold and showing them what we do, how we do it, taking some of the mystery out of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis is very helpful. I was very lucky, man. My wife's a trooper. I actually got assaulted in the last week that I was working when I was actually getting ready to retire. And she was I'm not gonna say like she was fine with it. She was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? You've only got a week left. Thank goodness for that. So I think these are things, that we should, just be open with our family about, and, take some of that mystery out, and maybe they won't be as anxious about the situation.
Yeah. And guys, one of the things, part of the recovery aspect, and we kind of touched on it before, but I want to revisit it again because I want to make sure we get it out there, is there should be a good understanding of why and how it happened before you go back. And even if that could be expressed to your family, because the funny thing is that there may be some concerns that relate to the times which are out of your control. And that's even scarier, like working in an understaffed facility, and being understaffed does affect what happened to you. That's the reason why it occurred. And then when you're going back, you have those same problems. But sometimes we may work in an understaffed facility, but that may not be the direct cause of why we were assaulted. So I want people to understand what I'm saying. Sometimes what we do is we'll take these concerns that the prison's having and we generalize it out, but that's not really addressing the issue. You could have made a mistake, God forbid. And by the way, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying it to minimize the responsibility of the person that committed the assault. I just want you to hear from this perspective so we can get the right frame of mind here. But, you could have made a mistake, let's just say. And then what happens is maybe the wrong cell door opened or whatever it is. Or maybe, you just had too many inmates out at once, or whatever it is. A personalized mistake. We all do it. We all done it. And then what happens here is, let's say, God forbid, you get assaulted. Well, the problem is you may not want to admit to that mistake because that's hard for you to admit to, but that's what you have to address in order to move forward successfully. Now, if you're going to go ahead and blame what happened, not on your mistake, which could have been what it is, or you blame it on things that really, okay, I know the facility is, let's say, understaffed, but did understaffing really have an issue was understaffing an issue that really played into this? And if it's not, the problem is you're going to go back to work, but you haven't addressed the concerns of what happened. So this is really a dialogue in which you have to really be honest with yourself and get a true understanding of what went wrong and how do I make sure that this doesn't happen again. And hopefully it is within your control. What's your thoughts on that, Connie, when it comes to kind of dealing with the issue in an honest way?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about accountability, right? Like, I think, yes, we would like to say the institution has a responsibility to protect us, right? Like, and I think, of course, if there are sort of those avoidable things, right? Like, a door that was never repaired, or there was a spill that was never cleaned up. So when someone goes running to a code, they end up slipping. They're now in a vulnerable position. Like, I think if there was those kind of things that we know could be fixed or corrected, I think, yes, there's a accountability that the institution has. But I think when there's a situation where maybe you underestimated something or you overestimated something, you were overly confident, something could have happened where you might be the reason. Maybe there was an exchange between you and this inmate, you thought it was no big deal, and now it turns into something later on, right? Like, I think being honest with ourselves about what role we played will really matter, because if you keep lying to yourself, it doesn't help with the healing process either, right? Like, you've got to come to terms with actually what happened, whatever it is you may have done or didn't do in that moment. And then it's like, that's when the healing can begin, because you are comfortable with the reality of the event, right? But I think when you're still trying to change the narrative, you're never really coming face to face with what happened. And then how do you fix that too, when your healing is based on something that's not a true reflection of what transpired?
Yeah, that's powerful, Connie. And by the way, guys, we're not looking at in a way to shift blame. It's not what we're telling you. It's not like, hey, well, you're saying it's not the inmate's fault, it's mine. No one's saying that. What we're saying is you have to address all avenues. Now, Gary, I know it's kind of like a generalized question, but when reviewing, in your mind, playing out what happened, what are certain things that, I know it's kind of a generalized question, but maybe we could just get an idea of it. Certain things that you want to ask yourself to make sure that when you do go back to work, you feel confident and effective.
Well, I'll answer that question, but I do want to add one thing that I'm seeing and I'm not liking. You're talking about things that make the inmates attack the officers. Well, I think we're losing control of discipline within our prisons and jails. I think we're getting too lax. I think that a lot of management is playing too far with the media and trying to please the media, and we're forgetting about our own people. And I have to get that out there, whether it makes some people mad or not. I'm really not worried about it. But I'm going to tell you, that's another big one. Take a lot of these, I won't name any names, take a lot of these jails or prisons we're reading about weekly that are just going off the chain with assaults on officers. Discipline. I'm not saying excessive force, beat the inmates, I'm the tough guy. I'm saying use the tools we have to remove these inmates, lock them up, give them some kind of consequence for what they did, charge them criminally. I just had to get that out there. That's a big reason a lot of officers are being assaulted today.
Oh yeah, I agree, Gary. I'll tell you something. What you just said is going to hit home with a lot of people, because that's what they feel is provoking the assaults, because they feel that the inmates kind of have carte blanche right now, and especially now if you're considered a vulnerable inmate. I mean, you're so very limited to what you could do that inmates don't get any consequences. So the sad thing is that, one, staff doesn't feel that their life has value at that point because no one's protecting them. But the other thing is, staff in survival mode may take, I'm not saying this is right, but may take measures into their own hands because they've been pushed into survival mode. But Gary, I wanted to ask you and Russ the same question. So I wanted to know if you'd be able to answer the second part of that. Like, if you're going through this incident in your head and you've been assaulted, what are some of the things that you're going to want to have addressed with yourself mentally before you even think about going into work, going into that same environment? Because the last thing you want is to have generalized feelings. That's why I'm telling people you want to be as specific as possible so you can see what those concerns are and address the concerns. So just in case when you go back to work, you know exactly where the concerns are and, you know, what areas of your job you have to kind of work on. But with that said, if you don't address it and you come back in and you don't know what the concern is, then, you know, you could freeze at any moment. You could be aggressive at any moment. So what are some of the things that you need to kind of ask yourself just to make sure you're mentally ready to go back into the same environment?
Ask yourself, am I physically healed? Am I ready to go back in? Number one. Mentally, do I have all the questions answered that I had on my mind? Hey, Anthony, you're doing this topic tonight on your show. So we're trying to answer some of those questions, you know, that help you get mentally prepared. You want to be mentally prepared to go back in the game. It's just like an athlete of any age, you know. You get your kneecap busted, you get hurt in a game somewhere. They have fear going back into their first game as well, hoping, I hope I don't hurt my leg again. I hope my knee doesn't pop again. I'm not going to run like I did before. I'm afraid I'll get hurt. Same thing with this. We're just in a different type of situation. And if you don't feel that you're medically ready, talk to someone. Talk to your agency. Talk to human resources. Talk to a senior officer. Talk to a supervisor. And if you don't feel you're mentally ready, tell someone. Tell someone that you trust in your chain of command. I've just got a little bit of fear going on here, and get help, because you know what? Talking things out really do help you mentally. What do we do when we have problems in life? We talk to a good friend, or we talk to a professional counselor, you know, and it gets you back in the game.
And I love that, because basically what we're telling you is that you have to get into the game before you look at it, even from that staff member's perspective, you know. And I love you brought the sports analogy, Russ. I mean, to me, that sports analogy plays out. You know, let's say I'm the best running back in the world, which I'm not, but I used to be quick. I'll be honest with you. I used to be quick. But I'm not the biggest guy. I'm only 5'5", so I can be as quick as I want, but I can't take a hit. So let's just say I had skill. Let's say I'm 6'2", 250, all muscle, you know, and someone decides to give me the ball. And let's say I'm running the perfect game and all of a sudden I get hit with a shitty tackle. If I don't figure out if, you know, was that my fault what I did, or was it, you know, the way the tackle was, that could stop me from playing the best game of my life, because I have not identified what was wrong, you know, and I think that plays out here, Russ. Would you agree? If you don't identify what's wrong, you know, before going in, it could make you hesitant, or it could make you really overly aggressive with the population. Would you agree?
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, the different skills that we build as officers. You know, it's doing searches, doing contraband interdiction, learning to use the tools that we have. And the way that we come by those is, you know, the experiences that we put ourselves into. Well, you know, one of the things that we need to do all the time, especially when we're acting in a tactical manner out there, is to come back at the very least in our own minds and run the after action review for ourselves. You know, hopefully, you know, depending on, you know, just how big of a tactical situation it was, you know, we might need to run that with some other people so we can work on the team level tactics. And so that shouldn't be any different than what you do when you decide that, you know, you're coming back after an injury, or you just got injured and it's only been a couple of days or whatever. You should be running that internal after action review. And you should be deciding, you know, okay, what areas of control should I have seen this coming? Should I have had more distance between myself and the inmate? How could I have changed things? How could I have known that I needed to change things? And then understanding that there is an element of chance that's going to happen that is going to get past the best, you know, insights that we have, that's going to get past the best tactics that we have. And sometimes things are just going to go wrong. And sometimes things are just going to go wrong inside something else that's already going wrong. Once we answer those questions for ourselves, once we're sure that we're healed, once we have an idea of how we're going to take proactive measures into our hands to beat this same situation in the future, then I think that you should feel ready to come back. sometimes that's going to happen on a very short time scale. Maybe you just got some bumps and lumps, and a day or two is all you've got at your disposal. Sometimes you might have a few weeks. God forbid that it's a career-ending energy, but in the end, it's all about your own internal review of what you did and why you did it, and everything else that's happened on paper and video and everything else out there. I got you. You're muted again.
Can I tell you something? That's cheating.
No.
That's cheating.
No. Just go on.
That wasn't even a second in. I did my first and you already got me. So this kind of falls into that last part of what this gentleman said, the officer said, when it came to, being nervous, having anger, doubt in their ability to do the job, and having confidence. And I want to add something before we come to a close and wrap up the dialogue. I want to kind of feed off on what Russ is saying here. You got to make sure before you go back to work that you're asking yourself the right questions to motivate you forward. And you're not asking yourself questions that take you backwards. Sometimes we get so caught up in doubt that the questions that we need to ask to kind of give us that positive momentum are filtered in doubt. And we're never going to move forward if we're asking ourselves the wrong questions. So you got to ask are these questions motivating me to move forward? Are they really addressing the issue, or are they just adding fear? You really got to kind of, I love what Russ said. You really got to kind of understand the questions you're asking, because if you're asking the wrong questions, and that's sometimes when you may need the professional help, because you may be caught in such a negative mindset that you may not be able to understand how you're kind of dealing with how the questions you're asking are really related to your mindset at that moment. So if you don't have the right mindset and you're looking to heal, well, you're not going to ask yourself the right questions, because it's going to be filtered through a mindset that's already not pushing you forward. Connie, what's your thoughts on the right mindset and then kind of asking the right questions to move forward? Do you think that makes sense?
So I think it makes sense, but I don't know that it's a realistic expectation, right? Because sometimes you don't really know what you're walking into when you finally do go back to work, right? You don't know what feelings, emotions, and such are going to come up. I think, yes, in the best case scenario, you can pull yourself together, you can be reflective and all that great stuff. But I think it's having people around you to kind of help guide you through that process, right? Because you might be a little cloudy in your judgment just because it happened. It's fresh. You're trying to figure out what you feel, and you're probably questioning, should I still be here, right? Is this the job for me? Is it worth it? And I think when you start to question your why, it shifts your mindset, right? Because you're just simply not sure anymore. Or I think when these incidents happen, sometimes it does rattle that confidence. And so the doubt that you have isn't it isn't misplaced. It just kind of is, right? Which I think is okay that there is some doubt, but I think it's having people around you that can help, that you can talk to. They can help get you through all of those thoughts and all of the doubt and all of the stuff that you may not be thinking clearly. And that's not some cliche. It just is a reality that you experienced a traumatic event in your workplace. And now you're trying to go back to the same workplace where chances of it happening again are pretty high, right? Because that's just the nature of the environment. And I think when we do have people around us who can kind of help get us through those really tough thoughts, it does help us get, I guess, grounded again in our purpose, where I think sometimes we lose it when we do go through these situations.
I think we're on the same page. So basically what I'm trying to get at was that even when Russ said at the beginning, or maybe towards the middle, there are going to be some people that are going to go right back to work. My concern is if they don't really evaluate what they've been through, they could freeze.
Correct.
They could be in such a want to prove themselves, to battle this ego, and I'm not going to let the inmates get to me, and they really haven't evaluated anything. They really haven't asked themselves the questions that they need to get through it properly, and then they go right into the facility, and the moment you need them, they freeze. So I think there's a great balance, and you're right. You know, the questions that you're asking, the dialogue that you're having with the people around you, you know, yes, you're going to have the dialogue that helps the person deal with the concern to see if that person is ready to go back on the job, or if they could go back on the job. Because guys, not everything is going to end in a result that's going to lead you back in the facility. I mean, but I think what Connie's saying, in line with what Connie's saying, and it's definitely something that we should gloss over real quick, is that the questions are really meant to identify where you need to be. And sometimes the end result is going to be, I can't do this anymore. But again, that's what the question's about. The dialogue here was more about getting ready to go back to work, but I may have overlooked something in that process. I may overlook the fact that, let's be honest, there are going to be some that won't be able to go back to work. They're just not going to be able, no matter what questions they ask, no matter, you know, who they're around, you know. So at that point here, that person could present more of a risk. So the question really comes to the fact is, are you going to be okay with any decision that has to be made, regardless of you going back or, you know, not going back? So I think that was a great thing that you brought in mind, Connie, because again, by the topic itself, it limited us to you're going back. But having said that, you're right. There's going to be moments where that person is not going back. And I think that's what the questions are. So ultimately, I think the questions are kind of getting yourself in the right mindset to make the right decision. Like, again, if you're in a negative mindset, you're not going to see maybe the things that would motivate you to go back. You're only going to see the things that are obstacles. But having said that, if you're in the right mindset and these obstacles are just too great to overcome, well, then it's okay. You know what, man, you made the effort, but maybe you can't come back because maybe it is that bad. But for this person here to have to go back and to remain confident, what I would say is, you're right. You are going to have the doubt regardless, but you can't let the doubt make you freeze. You can't let the doubt stop you from doing your job and being effective. So my concern is if the doubt crosses into your confidence, well, now there's a problem there. Now there's a problem where it's like, you know what, you really weren't ready to go back. So it depends. If the doubt is overwhelming you to stop you from being effective, you're not ready. Again, we all have doubt, but does that mean I'm going to continue to be effective? I'm going to try, yes. But if the doubt gets to the point where I freeze and I lose confidence, I become a risk not only to myself, but the people around us. Because again, in corrections, obviously we're human, I get it. But if anything messes with that confidence, like again, I get the doubt, the anger, but when anything messes with the confidence, my concern is the confidence stops someone from being truly effective. And that's when you start questioning your choices. You start becoming hesitant. And next thing you know, your actions or your lack of action could lead others to get hurt. But I thought what you mentioned, Connie, was spot on. Thanks for opening up that part of the dialogue, because I totally didn't think of that, of the fact that maybe people aren't ready to go back to work. So Connie, any feedback on what I just said? Because it's only fair. I want to make sure that we cover that base. That was spot on. I kind of stuck into that one perspective, but I do agree. Not everybody's going to be ready to go back to work. They may not be ready to go back to work.
Yes. I mean, I guess what I would just say to that is that mindset does matter. But like when people are actually just truly assessing whether or not they're ready, I think sometimes there's just a lot of pressure sometimes from agencies for people to just get back to work. And I think it's okay if someone has to say, I'm not ready, right? Like, because they do present a danger to themselves and others when they go back to work and they're not ready. You know, they're not prepared for what may happen. Not that they've forgotten the rules, that they've forgotten, you know, all the tactical operational stuff, but their brain just isn't, you know, kind of hitting on all cylinders in the way that it would have if they were actually prepared to go back.
Yeah, thanks, Connie, for adding that, because that kind of brings the dialogue into full circle. Hey, Gary, what's your thoughts on that, on what me and Connie just discussed?
Well, I understand that, and I respect the officers that fall off the horse and get right back on it. And I think Russ mentioned it earlier. You know, most of us in corrections will jump right back on that horse and go off and ride it. But I understand what Connie just said is very important, that don't let our ego take our place. Say, I'm ready. Yeah, I'm going back. That's why I think there has to be a barrier, and it's up to management or human resources, and both chain of command and human resources to work together. Because how many officers do you know that are going to say, I'm fine, and go back in when they're really not? They're going to say, I'm fine. Most officers will. Let me back in the game. I'm fine. So I think it's up to management, chain of command, and human resources to put a barrier there where we have some type of a briefing before you step back in. Like maybe the day before you're due to come back to work, let's make it mandatory to come in, sit down, let's discuss it, feel them out with a questionnaire, and see if they're really ready to come back or not.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful because, again, it addresses the individual and making sure that they are ready. And you're right, they're not just going in there because they feel it's expected or they don't want to be seen as weak. I mean, technically, the funny thing is strength comes from admitting you're vulnerable as opposed to kind of having that ego. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on what we were just discussing?
Yeah, this is one of those subjects where there's really, a huge spectrum. There's, the nature and the strength of the attack. There's the amount of trauma meted out. There's the individual's ability to deal with that. And any given day, any change in any of this huge number of things, there's just so many different permutations that come into this. And so I think that the best way for administration to really, be in touch and to, put their what they want to see on it with regards to doing the best that they possibly can for their people is to individualize that response. Train them beforehand, train everybody what's supposed to happen beforehand. Then when that one person gets hurt, because it's going to happen, hopefully we have things, that are going to, mitigate it or maybe prevent a lot of injuries and stuff. But then, make it specific to that individual, individualize that care, and have someone in HR assigned to them that they can call up and ask what's going on, because it's been my experience that sometimes they just kind of leave you in the dark, and when you don't know what's going on, it can make you angry and frustrated and mad and put you in a position where you're less ready to come to work. And then I think that when we individualize that according to the attack, according to the individual, according to other factors, that then when we get that end result of that individual coming back, they're going to be ready to take on that, whether it's 2 days or 2 months or 2 years down the road.
Mute.
You're muted.
Oh my God, man. Third time, fourth time. And, I should just have you guys compete with each other then at that point to race who tells me first. And the winner gets, my wife will make you an iced coffee. Again, I'm trying to, like Connie said, you got to train them. And
I did not say that.
No, I misinterpreted. No. Something with training them or, but I'm just joking, guys. Please, trust me. I don't even wear the pants. Trust me, I'll stand up right now. You'll see it. So, hey guys, I think it was a good dialogue. Again, it's just more of getting this out there because I think it's a concern that most people do face, and I'm glad that the officer sent it our way because we definitely got a chance to re-explore it. And sometimes even someone said, "Hey, you covered it before," but you get a different perspective. The dialogue is ever evolving, so we just kind of see where it goes, and that's the key about doing these shows. We don't stick to the same script. So there's a lot of things that we talked about today that were never discussed. Still never shifting from our original idea, but just evolving and growing. And maybe next year there'll be more things that we could think of that can add to this dialogue. So definitely something worth revisiting. Let's see. Hey, Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I want to say thank you for letting me be part of this dialogue. I love being able to have these discussions. It's something that, you can examine over and over and over again because it's necessary, because there is so much, danger in this particular profession, and not just from the inmates, but, from the things that we deal with after we've dealt with those inmates, the post-traumatic stress, the potential for suicide and all those things. And so, you know what, I'm just happy that I could be here. And, like Anthony said, time after time, there's always a new facet of this that we can examine, and it doesn't get old And I hope that ultimately it's helpful to someone or someone's out there to see what we've been through and what we understand, the incidents that we've, had to deal with, the people that we've seen attacked. And hopefully, that's going to translate into making it easier for someone else to come back.
I think what was great having you on the dialogue today, Russ, is because you've been there, you've dealt with it. I've never been assaulted, thank God. I don't know if Gary or Connie have. So it was good to have someone like you to been through it, but then also to kind of understand that, the perspective we gave, even though we haven't been through it, does have a level that does apply to those who's been there. And again, guys, the only reason why we're that way is because we're empathetic. We listen to the people, we listen to their stories, and we try our best to, kind of see what it's like to be in their shoes. And, and it's just, it's a bittersweet thing, because sometimes these people have stories that most people want to run away from, but we want to listen and get an understanding to see where that story can later have most value. So even the people that share their vulnerabilities, they share in an effort to change lives and make things better. So it's good for us to get something like this sent our way, not only for us to help this individual, but then also for, others who may be going through it that don't have the courage to speak up and say, hey, I feel what this person's feeling. So Russ was our immediate connection to the story. And then you have people like myself, Connie, and Gary who, we listen. I mean, I think that's the key. That's the gift. We listen and we just try to connect on just such an intimate level. Hey, Gary, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to say thank you to everybody out there that's working on the line every day, keeping us safe while we sleep at night. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anthony, for having me in the show, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary, for coming on. And by the way, we'll be doing another one. By the way, I want you to know something. Gary came on this show today, and Gary, I'm gonna violate your HIPAA real quick.
That's fine.
If that's okay. Connie, I'm sure Connie, I mean, just get my back. You're legal, and you got the medical background, so we won't count this as a violation. But Gary, first off, before I violate your HIPAA, I need your approval. Can I tell them your medical concern right now? And even though you had this medical concern, you were willing to do the show?
You can if I tell them about the phone call and how you ask. Okay.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so Gary has COVID right now.
Yes.
Gary, tell him about the phone call. Tell him about how
luckily, not like so many others that end up in hospital, where I'm going through it. I have body aches. I have headache. I have a sore throat. And Anthony called and I said, well, I'm feeling pretty blah. I'm only on my second day of COVID. Well, Gary, we're praying for you. Now, listen, I'm doing a show tonight. Can you come on the show tonight? Doesn't give a damn about my COVID. Just can we do a show tonight?
Gary, I care.
I know you do.
I needed you today for the
folks.
show.
I'm just joking. I know,
yeah. Right. And then, and by the way, let me show you guys this picture real quick. This is a picture of my family, and all of us right now are with Gary. We all have COVID, so you cannot hug these kids. You cannot. Well, you shouldn't be kissing my wife anyway. So I don't know where I was going with that. But we all have COVID. So me and Gary have it together. And hopefully Russ and Connie don't get it from us today from doing the show. But Connie, by the way, Russ may not know this. Connie has started season 3 of Fly Behind the Wall. And she was thinking of having you on as well. A bunch of people before she has me on. But I did get a chance again, as I said at the beginning of the episode. I listened to her first 2 episodes of season 3. Guys, you got to get to watch it because it kind of gives you a little more knowledge about Connie and her experiences, which totally relate to us. Not even just in the profession, but just someone who's able to chase after their dreams and not quit and just go after it. Plus, the first 5 or 10 minutes of the episode that's about 33 minutes, the second episode of this season, it's all about me. So it was all about me, definitely worth listening to multiple times at that point. But hey, Connie, any thoughts?
Oh my God. I don't even know what I'm thinking right now. Listen, I think as we come back to the topic, right? I think staff have to know that they have to be their own best advocate, right? Like, it would be great if the organization did all these wonderful things for us. I don't know that we're there yet where we can provide that level of human resources. I think Russ's idea about giving people training so they know what to expect and they can kind of prepare themselves and not necessarily wait for a third party to provide them with support. But I think you have to be your own best advocate. If you know that you are not mentally, physically ready to be back in that space. And I'm not talking about the folks who might be trying to milk the workers' comp FMLA cow. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those folks who really are just not ready. Like, don't put yourself in a position to be hurt again or for someone else to be hurt because you are not ready, right? Like, I think, yes, there is, that honor and wanting to be your brother's keeper and be present because we all know the short staffing situation. But really, it does us all a disservice when you come back and you're not ready to be back. So if I had to say anything, is just advocate for yourself so that when you are back, you are healthy back.
And I think that's kind of the real essence to the topic that I kind of didn't get at the very beginning, but Connie's 100% correct. This is about you being ready to come back. And again, if you're not, you can't force yourself to be, but you have to be able to understand that yourself. Last thing you want is to fake the funk and then wind up getting somebody hurt. I want to mention something before we go. So the key thing about Tier Talk, guys, real quick, is that even on Gary's channel, True Prison Stories, Russ Group, Keepers of Chaos, Connie's book, by the way, Cage with a Cocoon, but also her podcast, is that we provide information that we hope can be applied to people in the real world. I mean, to me, that's key. It's not just about you listening, but then saying that you find value. So the other day, Chuck Williams, I'm going to call him out there because it's a beautiful email here. He needed something on middle management because he's a lieutenant. He was going through some things and he wanted some advice. And I hope he doesn't get mad that I said his name. I just want to say his name because it's such a beautiful thing. And this is what motivates us. So I'm not going to say specifically what he needed the advice on, but it was a middle management concern, being that translator, let's just say that, from the strategic to the operations to the task or the tactical. And, so I found a video I did in 2019 that I was able to send to him. I thought that maybe this video could apply because, yes, you have any videos that relate to this topic. And we have over 1,000 videos, guys, on Tier Talk, pushing our way to 1,100. And it's crazy because someone come up with this random topic and it's like, oh, shit, I've done something on that, and be able to push it over. So what's great is when I take the time to find the video, because it's not that easy, guys. Sometimes if I can't find it through the search, I got to kind of go through because I'm like, I know I did this. And sometimes I can't remember if we did a whole video on it or if it just came up during a discussion. But either way, I knew I did something on this. So I found the video. And then what happened was I send it to him. And then the person writes back this after watching the video. Damn it. You hit exactly on what I was asking. Again, I'm so impressed and in awe. Please know that I use YouTube Downloader and get playable copies of your conversation because I want to find ways to share them with others and replay them when I need a check-in personally. I cannot lie. Listening to the video you sent, I got a little teary-eyed because you talked about shit I have felt and the struggles I deal with so perfectly. Thanks again for the for the millionth time. Geez, I wish I could be half as connected to our profession as you are. I thought I was in a good place, but you, Russ, and Connie all make me feel, after 22 years in the profession, I am still a rookie. All of you are what I need. A challenge to not let the situation of where I'm at to let me get complacent. I just watch and it makes me think. It makes me want to try to be more. Laterally, upwards, and downwards, we all need a push to help us move forward. You, sir, are mine, and thank you for that. And by the way, if you would have watched this episode and saw Gary's name would be in that email as well. This guy is very in tune with what we do, but this is the magic. And this is a great way to end today's show. And also by me saying, Gary, I do care that you had COVID. I want to make sure people know I'm not heartless, but we have a message to get out there. And I wanted to test you to see if you were a real warrior.
I got back on the horse, right?
Yeah, you got right back on the horse. Now you're getting off the horse, which is good. All right, guys, as always, stay safe. Please like, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify every time I post a video. Stay safe again. Stay safe multiple times.